no criminal charges. The district attorney clears law enforcement in a dozen cases that led to shootings or in custody deaths. Support for a new border wall. Parents of people who were killed by undocumented immigrants say their voices need to be heard.
I don't know you, but I have faith in you. You're going to make it.
Understanding the causes of suicide among veterans, how a San Diego group tries to help those who are struggling even decades after their service.
We're constantly monitoring the city hall results of all the cities up and down the coast, trying to figure out who's going to be the next city to open up the commercial cannabis industry. Chula Vista was a good spot.
The new year will bring a new market for the marijuana industry. Businesses compete to open up shop in Chula Vista. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. The San Diego County District Attorney is explaining why charges won't be filed in several use of force cases involving law enforcement. As KPBS's Priya Sridhar reports, each case involves either a shooting or a death in custody.
Ebony, in 2018 so far, there have been 8 officer-involved shootings and 4 deaths in custody. The officer-involved shootings are down from 20 in 2017, but the deaths in custody have doubled. Today, the DA's office released video of 11 of the 12 cases. District Attorney Summer Stephan says that after careful review of the evidence, no law enforcement officers will face any criminal charges in any of the cases. She said in 6 of the cases, the victims had guns or knives. All 4 of the victims who died in police custody had methamphetamine in their systems. She says in many of the cases, family members called police for help with their loved ones who dealt with substance abuse, mental health issues, and oftentimes both. She says it's important for law enforcement to have as much information as possible when responding to these kinds of incidents.
It's really important if they know that this is the drug of choice, methamphetamine, it's opiates, whatever it is, give that information. If they have a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis, also provide that. If you know that they're known to act violently when they've used certain drugs, then provide that information, because the more prepared that the responding officers are for what they're going to encounter, the better off their loved one is going to be.
She says she has been working with various officials in the law enforcement and mental health communities to issue a resource card for family members dealing with a loved one with substance abuse or mental health issues. She says tackling these issues in non-crisis times will help reduce the number of fatal incidents with police. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Customs and Border Protection will review its actions after a 7-year-old girl died while crossing into the U.S. The girl had come with her father from Guatemala. They were among a group of nearly 200 migrants in a remote area of New Mexico. Border officials say the group was transferred to a larger facility. During that time, the girl lost consciousness. Officials say she had gone several days without food or water. She was flown to a hospital in El Paso, but could not be revived. The political fight over a new border wall could lead to a government shutdown later this month. Congressman Juan Vargas says he won't support any new funding requested by President Trump. Today, he talked to KPBS about the issue and slammed the president's immigration policies.
Obviously, this president doesn't understand California, and he certainly doesn't understand the border. And his administration, the ones that are not going to jail, they certainly don't understand immigration either. So I wish they would just let the experts handle this and quit playing politics, because they're messing everything up. And in the process, you're going to see that kids are going to get hurt, people are going to die. That little 7-year-old girl that just died along the border of exhaustion because they don't know what they're doing. And there's zero tolerance, supposedly. It's zero humanity is what it is.
President Trump's supporters include 4 mothers who came to San Diego today to rally for the wall. As KPBS border reporter Jean Guerrero tells us, their kids were killed by men who illegally entered the U.S.
The mothers say the border wall would spare other people the pain of their loss. They called on Congress to approve funding for the infrastructure. Agnes Gibney came here from Riverside. She says she feels forgotten by the debate about family separations.
This is what separates me and my son. A marker, a cold marker that I go and caress and hold and cry because I cannot hug or get hugs for my son. This is my son.
Ronald was 29 when he was killed by an immigrant who had been deported and re-entered the U.S. The moms were joined by groups like San Diego Patriots and San Diegans for Secure Borders. Some criticized the migrant caravan in Tijuana as illegals. Human rights groups have condemned the terms illegal immigrants and illegal aliens, saying they're dehumanizing and stoke hatred. A majority of the people in the caravan have expressed a desire to apply for asylum legally. Kathy Hall's 18-year-old daughter was fatally struck by a driver who was here illegally. She says she feels for Central Americans who have come here because they lost a child to criminals back home. But she wants anyone who enters the U.S. to enter legally.
The man who killed my daughter had made the statement he did not stop because he did not want to be deported. Okay, so he valued his own life and more than he did whoever he had injured.
According to data from the Cato Institute, people in the U.S. illegally are less likely to commit crimes than U.S. citizens. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Marijuana growers and sellers will soon be allowed to do business in Chula Vista. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has details on the competitive process to get a license.
At Chula Vista City Hall, more than 160 people are finding out how to apply for a legal marijuana business.
I have a sincere interest in opening a cannabis retail location, and I'd like to thank you all for inviting us here.
In November, Chula Vista voters approved Measure Q, which opened the door for recreational sales of cannabis in the city.
We will be applying for retail and non-storefront delivery.
Nicole Connors runs Saku Cannabis, which operates a dispensary in Spokane, Washington.
Here in Chula Vista, we're actually exploring the area to see if this is a viable market. We're expanding into California with the Saku Cannabis brand.
Chula Vista is allowing up to 3 retail locations per council district, or 12 citywide. That's in addition to up to 10 cultivation businesses, and there's no cap on manufacturing or testing laboratories.
It's a very competitive industry.
Jared Yonker works for MJIC, which specializes in helping cannabis businesses launch and then connecting them to the industry.
We're constantly monitoring the city hall results of all the cities up and down the coast, trying to figure out who's going to be the next city to open up the commercial cannabis industry. Chula Vista was a good spot.
But there's still a number of illegal dispensaries operating in Chula Vista.
There's a lot of concern as to what the local municipality is going to do insofar as cracking down on the black market.
Chula Vista says they have closed down more than 10 illegal dispensaries this year and are working on more.
We can't make any guarantees, but we're bringing on a criminal prosecution unit to put some teeth into what can happen to those who are willing to operate illegally. The one thing I've learned from other cities is there's no guarantee that you're going to get everybody, but that is our goal.
Chula Vista hopes to start accepting applications for marijuana businesses shortly after the new year. Then the city will have a third party vet and rate those applications before choosing operators. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Prices for bus and trolley service in San Diego could change next year. The MTS Board of Directors has approved a plan that would adjust rates for some youth and monthly passes. Some price levels would rise, others would fall. MTS would also work with an outside company to update its mobile app. Sandag will consider final approval next month. Public transit buses in California will all be electric by 2040. The California Air Resources Board voted today to approve the transition, but it won't be cheap. An electric bus costs twice as much as one with a diesel engine. Advocates say transit agencies will end up saving money on fuel cost and maintenance. The deadline to sign up for health insurance through Covered California is tomorrow. The state's insurance marketplace was established under the Affordable Care Act. Recent changes to the law include the end of a tax penalty for those who are uninsured. Officials with Covered California say going without insurance to save money is a big risk.
Every one of those people going without insurance does two things. One, raises costs for everybody else. Because not only do health plans charge more, but some of those people end up in hospitals and don't pay their bills. We all pay those costs, all of us. The other thing it does is some of those people that roll the dice and go without insurance are going to end up in the hospital. They're going to be losers because they're going to end up having big bills they need to pay they can't afford.
Tomorrow is the deadline for coverage by January 1st. Those who enroll by January 15th can begin coverage on February 1st. Close to 1 million people are eligible for financial help. Elderly veterans commit suicide at a higher rate than their peers. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh looks at how serving in the military decades earlier can still lead someone to take their own life.
Robert Nielsen was drafted in 1961. He spent 2 years in the Army just before the Vietnam War. He was recently at the VA in San Diego as part of his treatment. 3 years ago, the 76-year-old came into the VA after contemplating suicide.
That's what brought me into the emergency room, because that wasn't really the first time. 2 months after I got out of the service, I attempted suicide.
Back then, Nielsen remembers standing on a subway platform watching a speeding train.
And I just figured if I just hold my hands up in the air, I could just let it suck me. Because somebody shouted, "What are you doing?" And that snapped me out of that trance, and I just walked out of the subway. But I still, that was like, I still didn't seek any help. I just figured, okay, I'll struggle through life.
It was a military sexual trauma, and it would take Nielsen another 50 years to ask for help.
And the guilt was because I wasn't strong enough to overpower the person. Plus, it was a high-ranking person.
All sorts of service-related issues can lay dormant, only to crop up later in life, says Ron Stark. Stark founded Moving to Zero in San Diego, where he counsels fellow veterans who have contemplated suicide. More than a few of them are elderly. Stark retired from the Navy in 1994. He served aboard a submarine in the Arctic in the 1970s and again during Desert Storm. Not a bad career, but Stark says for some older veterans, no accomplishment is ever enough.
We have things about stolen valor, and nobody wants to misrepresent themselves that it would be. So I'm a Vietnam-era sailor. I had every intention to going to Vietnam and ended up on submarines off the coast of the Soviet Union. So I couldn't have been farther from that. So I was a Vietnam era. I'm not a Vietnam veteran. Okay, I was in Desert Storm, but I wasn't in combat. We're constantly talking about what we're not quite.
Veterans struggling with suicide aren't always wrestling with memories of combat. Stark suffered from depression most of his life. He remembers sitting by the roadside with a pistol while he was still on active duty.
The military didn't make me who I was.
But the military establishes lifelong habits, both good and bad. You want to be someone people can rely on.
You know, you have a bad day at work, you can go home. You have a bad day on a submerged submarine, people die.
So if you're not feeling 100%, maybe it's better just to keep that to yourself. Stark describes suicidal feelings as a brief moment of blackness when all other options fade from view. Get past that, and a veteran is likely to survive. The VA is focused on finding risk factors: isolation, previous suicidal thoughts, access to firearms. Older men are also more likely to reject treatment for mental health issues, another big risk factor. Colin Depp, a psychologist at the VA in San Diego, says the problem is researchers don't know, among the people who have those risk factors, who will actually attempt suicide.
We're not very far ahead in terms of understanding who's out there who's really likely to take their lives in the next hours, days, months.
In one VA program, Robert Nielsen, the vet who was 73 before he sought treatment for himself, is now writing letters of encouragement to fellow veterans who are just beginning treatment. Pulling out one of those letters, Nielsen explains how he can help a veteran that he'll never meet in person.
What does it mean to for somebody to have faith in me? How about that? We open this one. I don't know you, but I have faith in you. You're going to make it.
The letters are just one more nudge to keep veterans away from that dark moment when suicide feels like the only option. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Women take charge at San Diego City Hall. Security gaps may leave Navy ships at risk on the bay. And a divisive debate over migrants at the border. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
As we recap on this Friday, definitely a bit more cloudier than what I anticipated, but that is due to the moisture to our north. So we got some rain and even some snow activity to the north of Southern California due to a trough. Now, the moisture didn't really get into our area in terms of precipitation, but we definitely noticed the cloudy skies. And you can clearly see that in the last 6 hours of your radar and satellite. And towards LA, they got some activity, but here in San Diego, most of that moisture stayed to our north, but the clouds definitely took on over. As we head into tonight, we're dropping down to 42 in Borrego Springs. Still going to be some cloudy conditions, 37 in Mount Laguna and 42 in Oceanside. We'll be looking at partly cloudy skies in San Diego with a low of 53. We head into your Saturday, getting a bit on the milder side. That's always nice to have some warmer air in place. Phoenix also going to be in that warm zone as well as into Vegas. Still going to be some shower activity to our north, but this warming trend, we should enjoy it because we have some cooler air returning into your extended forecast. We're topping off at 69 in Oceanside, 70 in San Diego, mainly sunny conditions for Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna with a high of 57. As we head through your early week forecast, we do have a better chance for some more moisture to peak on into Southern California. This will be due to a trough to our north that will bring what it did today, cloudy conditions as well as the likelihood for some showers into the early week. So at the coast through this weekend in the upper 60s, looking at a dry forecast. 65 on Monday with an afternoon shower likely. We'll also see the shower activity likely in towards the inland areas on your Monday with a high of 68, but for the weekend in the mid 70s. Upper 50s in the mountains for Saturday and Sunday, and feeling cooler as we head into your Monday, but a better chance to remain out of that wet zone and to the mountains as well as into the deserts for your early week. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swat. Back to you.
Apple expands to San Diego, discounts on holiday shopping, and a good time for women at the box office. It's all part of today's Friday Business Report with SDSU marketing lecturer and Bottom Line marketing co-founder Mira Kopik. This week, Apple announced plans to expand across the country, including bringing more than 1,000 jobs here to San Diego. And this announcement comes on the heels of Amazon's announcement to expand in San Diego as well. So how does this add to San Diego's stance in the tech industry?
Well, it's a great move, because now you have a lot of prestigious companies. So not only did Amazon a few months ago announce additional hires in San Diego, Apple announced over 1,000 as part of a big move of bringing a new tech campus to Austin, Texas, with 5,000 employees. What Apple's going to do is they're really going to look for wireless engineers. Qualcomm recently has let go over the last year and a half, about 1,500 employees. A lot of them are these wireless engineers. But for San Diego, it's a big plus. And it's going to be a big plus for UCSD, which has over 2,800 students in their computer science and engineering area, and even San Diego State that launched a research center to really focus on wireless devices and wearables in January. So I think we're poised to be successful going forward.
Now, moving on, Christmas is about a week and a half away, and for many people, that means last-minute shopping and hopefully finding a great bargain. Recently, a company called Swag Bucks surveyed shoppers, and they found that many of the shoppers said that they need at least a 20% discount for them to consider the buy a good deal. So what's the reality for shoppers this holiday season?
Well, the reality is it's interesting. Shoppers have been conditioned. Shoppers since before the recession, most deals during the holidays were between 10 and 30%, and 30% was pretty aggressive. Since the recession, shoppers were conditioned to do really, really deep discounts. So from 2008 to about 2013, people are looking at 40 to 70% discounts. And when now they're being asked, they're saying, well, what gets you out of bed just to buy something? So this number 25% becomes really important. And the other part of it is because they're also conditioned by Amazon. Amazon offers regularly 20, 25, 30% discounts every single day because they don't have all the fixed costs of a brick and mortar store, and they're able to do this. So it really ratchets up the pricing pressure on retailers. This holiday season, however, if you're out in the stores, you're not seeing the huge discounts. You're seeing discounts more in the 20 to 30% range across most retailers. Macy's, who used to do 40 to 60% on average, is around 30%. And there you'll see the occasional 60% at some specialty retailers like a J. Crew or Old Navy.
So another holiday favorite, going to the movies. So it turns out, based on new analysis, that movies with the lead star being a woman actually brought in more money than movies starring men. What does this tell us from a marketing perspective?
Well, it tells us that Hollywood has left potentially a lot of money on the table. This analysis from 2014 to 2017 of all 350 movies that were produced showed that at every production level, so if you're doing a small independent movie to a big blockbuster that cost over $100 million, at every production level, movies starring women grossed more than movies starring men. And that tells us that the Me Too movement, to some extent, and the kind of the hashtag not so white movement that talked about diversity really starting to resonate. I think consumers and individuals are more open to seeing women as protagonists. And there's an interesting study that's done called the Bechtel study that kind of looks at these movies and says, are they sexist? And what they do is they look at the lead two protagonists, and if they're engaging in conversations, two female protagonists, outside of talking about a guy, right, it's seen as not sexist. And every over $1 billion blockbuster passed the test, which means that these movies are meaningful and consumers are going to have a lot of interesting options come this holiday season in 2019.
So that's encouraging news right there.
Absolutely.
Miro, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
New movies this weekend include a new twist on Spider-Man and a zombie musical. KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando shares her reviews.
Roma represents not just a return to Mexico for director Alfonso Cuarón, but also a return to a more personal narrative. Roma looks to the day-to-day life of a family in Mexico City in the early 1970s. Cuarón says it's about the periods in history that scar societies and moments in life that transform us as individuals. Beautifully but unpretentiously shot in black and white, Roma holds us wrapped with its boundless compassion. Snowflake takes us to Berlin of the near future, where two hitmen find themselves at the mercy of a cursed script that appears to be dictating their fate. Pace, violence, eccentric characters, and wickedly funny plot of Snowflake all feel lifted from a Quentin Tarantino movie. But Snowflake's filmmakers add an interesting sense of guilt, redemption, and acceptance of responsibility for one's actions that's uniquely their own. Also swinging into theaters this weekend is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
All right, people, let's start at the beginning. My name is Gwen Stacy. For the last 2 years, I've been the one and only Spider-Gwen. And one day this weird thing happened.
The animation style is fresh and innovative, and the script is surprisingly well crafted. It captures the spirit of the Marvel comic, dishes up clever fun, and even develops genuine emotion.
You gotta say I love you back.
Dad, are you serious?
This just became my favorite Marvel superhero film, so treat yourself to an early holiday gift and go see it.
Let's go.
How many more spider people are there?
They save it for Comic-Con.
What's comical?
Mary, Queen of Scots tries to spin a feminist tale out of the 16th century political rivalry between Mary Stuart and Elizabeth I. Saoirse Ronan delivers an impassioned performance as the doomed queen, but the film puts her up on a pedestal and shortchanges Margot Robbie's Elizabeth in the process. The performances rule here, and the film is gorgeous to look at. But Mary, Queen of Scots ultimately disappoints, especially in comparison to The Favorite, which delivers a much more audacious tale of court intrigue and women jockeying for power. Hopping over the North Sea, we find Mother Nature exercising her power in The Quake. Norway discovered the box office appeal of the disaster film in 2015 with The Wave, about a tsunami hitting the fjords and the geologist who tried to alert everyone to the dangers. Now, that same geologist identifies a new threat. The Quake doesn't work as well as The Wave, but it has some impressive effects to entertain us. And to close, here's a film that was not screened for critics, but I'm dying to see. Anna and the Apocalypse. It's a musical zombie flick. Imagine Shaun of the Dead meets Glee, and you'll be singing and dancing your way through the zombie apocalypse. I can't wait. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.